Hello everyone, this is Dan Clark with the Training Department at Freedom Scientific. Today's lesson is Excel 2016, Lesson 1. The objectives for today's lesson include being able to describe the Excel program window, rename a worksheet, add a new worksheet, rearrange worksheets, create, open, save, or close workbooks, navigate between and within worksheets, use ranges in Excel, use names in Excel, insert and read comments, create row and column headers for ranges that read automatically for screen reader users, and we'll talk about some JAWS keystrokes for Excel as well. I'll push out the next page here.
Excel 2016, Lesson 1 - Internet Explorer.
So there is an exercise link in the documentation here. There are a couple of links there. The first link is one to allow you to open the documentation in a new browser window if you're participating in the live webinar.
Open the documentation in a new browser window opens in a new window link.
And the second link on that page is a restaurant supply sample spreadsheet, unfinished.
Restaurant supply sample spreadsheet Excel 2016 - unfinished opens an Excel workbook link.
And I already have that particular workbook open, so I'm going to just switch over to it.
Alt-Q, Restaurant supply sample spreadsheet Excel - unfinished.xlsx-Excel.
So the first thing I want to talk about is the Excel program window overview. Excel 2016 is similar to the other Office 2016 products, pretty much in overall layout. Initially, the program opens to a startup screen in the Backstage view, and the startup screen contains a number of templates you can use in Excel. To close that screen and get to a blank workbook, just press Escape. There is a title bar at the top of the screen, and then below that, there's the ribbon, which contains the upper group of tabs, and then there's a lower part that contains the group of controls, the lower part of the ribbon I'm talking about, that contains a group of controls that are relevant to the currently selected tab on the upper tab of the ribbon. There's also a quick access toolbar, and that's at the top left of the screen. And then there's the main portion of the screen where the current worksheet is shown. And then at the bottom of the page, there's a taskbar. So just looking at the top line of the screen, far left, I see the quick access toolbar, and it has a couple of things on there like can't redo because I haven't done anything to undo or redo. Can't undo, Control Z, Z. Save, automatically save. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's something else that's auto-saved. So I'm going to remove a couple of those maybe and put some other things that are more useful to me there. If you're interested in doing that, because many of these things can be done with the keyboard, you can just right-click on one of those items on the cat.
Remove from quick access toolbar.
Cat, we say QAT for quick access toolbar, and we pronounce it cat, and just choose remove from quick access toolbar.
Leaving menus. Cost of restaurant supplies used by month.
Just to the right of the quick access toolbar, there's a drop-down, Customize Quick Access Toolbar. I'll click that.
Automatically save checked.
There are a couple of other things here that you could choose. It has those three things checked on my computer on the cat right now for automatically save, and I'm going to uncheck that one.
Leaving menus. Cost of restaurant supplies used by month.
Personal preference. You could leave that saved and it will save it every once in a while. I think I'll change it back.
Leaving menus. Cost of restaurant automatically save checked.
Then we got save, open, new, and some other things like that. And you can choose those. Now, if there's what you want to add to the quick access toolbar is not there, there's a choice down in this
Sort descending.
Customize Quick Access Toolbar menu.
More commands, ...
For more commands, and when you press enter on that, it brings you to the options dialog box.
Leaving menus. Categories list box Excel options. Excel options. Quick access toolbar. 10 of 12. Selected.
And I'm not going to go through this in this lesson, but there is a column here where you can choose different things to add to the quick access toolbar, and then there's an add button. The column that you can choose from is on the left. The column you add to is on the right. In between those is an add or a remove button, depending on where you're focused with things. So for now, I'm just going to press cancel.
Cost of restaurant supplies used by...
Another really quick way to add something to the Quick Access toolbar is to navigate to it in the ribbon and either right-click on it. When you see it in the ribbon, if you right-click on it, for example, if I wanted to right-click on Format,
context menu,
and then choose, let's say,
cells group box.
I do a lot of renaming of sheets.
In
there is Rename Sheet in that menu.
Rename sheet.
And if I right-click or press Shift F10 to get a context menu.
Shift F10, add to Quick Access toolbar.
The first item in that context menu is Add to Quick Access toolbar. So if you right-click or press, the application key, or if you don't have an application key or you can't use the mouse, you can also use Shift F10 to get that context menu on any item pretty much in the ribbon, and then add it to the Quick Access toolbar if it's something you use a lot. So I'm going to press Escape a few times here.
Escape. Escape. Leaving menus. Cost of restaurant supplies used by month. A1.
The default Excel2016 workbook is typically now made up of a single worksheet, and the worksheet consists of a grid of columns and rows. The column headers are labeled A through Z, and then AA through AZ, BA through BZ, and so on up to XFD, that's X-ray Foxtrot Delta. That's a total of 16,384 columns. If you need a few columns, I think they've got you covered. The rows are numbered from 1 to 1,048,576. So you have plenty of room to work initially in the initial worksheet. Worksheets can be renamed to something more meaningful because the default will be Sheet 1, Sheet 2, etc. And using the keyboard, I'm going to press Alt and the letter H to go to the Home tab.
Alt H. Lower ribbon. Group box. Home tab.
And I'm going to, by the way, the Home tab of the ribbon, what I'm looking for is the Cells group on the lower ribbon. And let's see, the Cells group is almost to the far right. It's hard to see, there's a key tip blocking it from my view, but it's almost on the far right-hand side of the lower ribbon. And I'm going to press the letter O for the Format button that we just looked at a moment ago. So I'll press O.
Menu. Leaving menus. Row height ...
And then what I want to do is choose Rename Sheet. And Rename Sheet is about halfway down. You can press the letter R to reach it, or you can just press down arrow to find it. I'm just going to press the letter R for Rename.
Leaving menus. Edit.
Now at this point, on the lower part of the screen, there's the tabs that are hanging down the lower part of the Excel window, and they're just above the status bar. So the first sheet, which on this particular workbook was already named Restaurant Supplies, is now highlighted, and I can type over that. So let's just say I want to type in supplies for my restaurant. Once you've typed in your new title,
blank,
I can press Enter, and that will rename it.
Restaurant supplies used by month. A1.
Now, at the present time, you can hear the characters of text as you type in that field where you can name the worksheets, but you won't be able to hear when you're reading them by character or by word, etc., to edit them. So if you need to make sure that the editing is properly done, I would probably type the information into something like Notepad for the name of your sheet, make sure it's spelled properly and everything, and then copy and paste that when you go to rename the sheet. That's going to be a little bit easier. At some point, hopefully Microsoft will, or I'm pretty sure this is a Microsoft issue at this point in time, but at some point Microsoft and JAWS hopefully will work together where we can read and edit that text in those rename the worksheet area. Now also, if you try to find out the physical number of a worksheet that's been renamed, so how do you know if it's sheet 1, sheet 2, or sheet 3 originally? In this particular document, I have a second sheet, so I'll press Control Page Down, to move to what is called sheet 1 here.
Sheet 1, blank, A1.
And I can press the JAWS keystroke, insert F1, to find out some information about this workbook.
This is the spreadsheet area. The worksheet name is sheet 1 and its number is 2. Printable pages information colon.
I stopped JAWS from reading there, but the virtual viewer opened up and told me I was in a spreadsheet area. Now, this worksheet name is sheet 1, and that was added when I added this sheet to the workbook after I had renamed that first one for supplies for my restaurant. And its number, it says, is 2. So it's actually the second created worksheet in the workbook, but it got renamed as sheet 1. So even though down at the bottom of the page it says sheet 1, the physical number of this workbook is sheet 2. I know that can be confusing, but if you press insert F1, you'll find out through the virtual viewer, if you need to, which one is actually physically sheet 1 and which one was actually physically sheet 5, for example. I'll press escape to close the virtual viewer.
Escape.
So let's go ahead and add a new worksheet. We're going to go back to the Home tab of the ribbon and the Cells group again where we were a moment ago. Alt-H to go to the Home tab of the ribbon.
Alt-H. Lower ribbon, Group box, Home tab.
And I'm looking for the Insert button, which is just to the left of the Format button where we were a few minutes ago, so I was a little bit off there. It's about 2 over to the left, and the key tip letter is the letter I. If you want to press that, or click it with your mouse.
Menu, leaving menus, insert cells, control plus shift plus equals.
So there's insert cells, and I'll press down arrow.
Insert sheet rows.
Rows.
Insert sheet columns.
Columns.
Insert sheet.
And just a sheet. So if I wanted to press enter here, I could insert a new sheet, and I'll do that.
Sheet 2, blank, A1, leaving menus, lower ribbon, Group box, Home tab, leaving menus, blank, A1.
Now what happened is I have my first worksheet called supplies for my restaurant. The second sheet is now sheet 2, which is the one I just created. And sheet 1, which was the one that had focus when I created this new sheet, got pushed to the right. So that's important to note that new worksheets are always inserted ahead of or before the current sheet. So you may need to do some rearranging. And that's what we want to talk about next. What if I want to put sheet 2 after sheet 1 in this particular example? Now, if you've gotten to the point where you're following along and you only have sheet 1 and you don't have another sheet 2, just go ahead and repeat that part for adding a new worksheet. Go to the Home tab of the ribbon and choose the Insert button with the letter I and Insert Sheet with the letter S, or click that through with your mouse. So rearranging worksheets, I want to move the sheet 1 ahead of sheet 2. Now, restaurant supplies is still the first sheet. So I'm going to make sure that the sheet I want to move is the current sheet. So you can press Control Page Up or Control Page Down. So I'll press Control Page Up.
Supplies for my restaurant. Cost of restaurant supplies used by month. A1.
Okay, there's supplies. And I'll press Control Page Down.
Sheet 2, blank,
There's
A1.
sheet 2, and I'll press Control Page Down again.
Sheet 1, blank,
There's
A1.
sheet 1, and if I press Control Page Down again, nothing happens. So I'll go back up, Control Page Up to sheet 2.
Sheet 2, blank, A1.
So you want to make sure that the sheet you want to move is the current sheet. That's what I've done here. And we're going to go to the Home tab of the ribbon with Alt and the letter H.
Alt-H. Lower ribbon, Group box, Home tab.
Once again, we're looking in the Cells group over to the far right on the lower ribbon. And we're looking at the Format button again, which is the button on the right within that group, or the letter O, and I'll press O right now.
Menu, leaving menus, row height ...
Row height is the first one. As you press down arrow through here, you'll find other things that you'll use from time to time. Auto fit row height, column width, default width, hiding and unhiding sheets, renaming sheets like we just did, and just below rename sheet is move or copy sheet. I could click that or choose the letter M, the key tip M, and I'll do that.
Menu. Move or copy dialog. Move selected sheets. Before sheet : list box. Supplies for my restaurant. 1 of 4. Supplies for my restaurant.
All right, so I'm going to press down arrow until I come down to the one that says move to end.
Sheet 2. Sheet 1. Left paren move to end right paren.
Because sheet 2 is currently in the middle and I want to move it to the end, which would put it past or behind or after sheet 1. So I'll press enter.
Blank. A1.
And we did it. So it's been a while. I'm going to press control page up to do move to the prior sheet.
Sheet 1. Blank.
There's
A1.
sheet 1. And I'll press control page up to go to the first sheet.
Supplies for my restaurant. Cost of restaurant supplies used by month. A1.
And there's the restaurant supplies, or supplies used for my restaurant, as I renamed it. So you can use the following keystrokes to open or close a workbook, save it, create it, etc. To create a new workbook, press Control N, as in November. To save an existing workbook, you can press Control S for save, and if I do that,
Control S.
that just saves the current sheet as it is. If you want to save as, there are a couple of things you can do. If you press Alt F to go to the File tab,
Alt F. Backstage view. File. Info tab.
and if you press down arrow here to choose Save As,
New tab. Open tab. File menu. Save. Leaving menus. Save as tab.
you can see it's taken me 2 or 3 steps already to get here. And I'd have to go further. I'd have to tab and find the Browse button, and then browse to where I wanted to go and save that file. Or there's also OneDrive here that I could save it to. So I'm going to press Escape to get out of this Backstage view.
Escape. Selected.
And instead of going to the Backstage view with Alt F and then choosing Save As, just press Control F12. Control F12, I'm sorry, not Control F12, just F12 by itself. F12 by itself is a Microsoft Office keystroke to bring up the Save As dialog.
F12. Save as dialog. File name : edit combo. Restaurant supply sample spreadsheet Excel-unfinished.xlsx.
All right, so that brings up the Save As dialog and saves you a lot of steps as opposed to going through the Backstage view. I'll press Escape here.
Escape.
And if you wanted to open a workbook, you could press Control O.
Control O. Backstage view. File. Open tab.
Once again, that goes to the Backstage view, and you could navigate through that, tab a few times and find where you want to go, eventually get to the folder you want, and then save it there. I'm going to press Escape to get out of the Backstage view again.
Escape.
And if I wanted to open a new workbook, I can just press Control F12.
Control F12. Open dialog. File name : edit combo.
That brings up the open dialog, and it's a lot faster. So I'll press Escape to get out of that.
Escape. Cost of restaurant supplies used by month. A1.
You could find the recent workbooks that you had opened in the File tab under Recent Documents if you were looking from it there. You could go Alt F to go to the File tab.
Alt F. Backstage view. File. Info tab.
And I'm looking for Recent. I'll press the letter R.
Open tab.
There it is. And that brings up the Open tab. Now, on the right-hand side, as we change the Backstage view here, you could tab, as I said before, several times, probably 8 or 10 times to find the third column to the right, which is where the current files are. In former versions, the first document was number 1, the second document was number 2, the third document, most recently used document, was number 3. In other words, the most recent document, last one used, is number 1. They've changed that in this particular version, and it may change back to make it easier at some point, but right now, the current document is key tip Y as in Yankee 2. And the one after that is Y3, then Y4, Y5, etc. So as again, that might change as some of these changes come out from Microsoft, because it's a little bit more tedious and cumbersome to remember the Y2 and the Y3 as opposed to just number 1, 2, and 3. But I can't say for sure if that'll change. So I'm going to press Escape to get out of the Backstage view.
Escape. Escape. Selected. Cost of restaurant supplies used by month.
Okay, I'm back in the spreadsheet. Focus is still in the ribbon, so I'm going to press Escape once more.
Escape. Leaving Escape.
A couple of times. To navigate within and between worksheets, you can press the arrow keys just to move in any direction. So if I press right arrow, focus moves to B1.
Blank. B1.
Down arrow would move to B2.
Blank. B2.
Down arrow would move to B3.
Blank. B3.
Right arrow would move to C1.
Blank. C3.
And so on. You can also use the Go To dialog box, which is Control G.
Control G. Go to dialog. Reference : edit combo.
And you can type in a cell reference number there. For example, I could type in A5
5.
to move there and press Enter.
Blank. A5. Restaurant supply sample spreadsheet Excel. Blank. A5.
Control G is the keystroke, but you can also use function key F5. Now, if you're working with the cloud version of Office 365 for Excel, you can't use F5 to use the Go To there, because F5 is the browser keystroke to refresh the screen. So you'll just have to use Control G if you're using the online version of Excel. Of course, we talked about already Control Page down, Control Page up to move to the next or prior sheet. If you'd like to get a list of sheets, you can press Control Shift S as in Sierra.
Move to worksheet dialog. List 1 list view. Supplies for my restaurant. 1 of 3.
This is a Move to Worksheet dialog box, and it's a JAWS dialog box. So I'm going to press Escape to get out of that.
Escape. Blank. A5.
If I'm in a cell that has number in it, I'll go to C6, for example.
Blank. Week 1. 80. C6.
Actually, let's go back up to C5 where it says week 1.
Week 1. C5.
What if my boss or somebody decided that they wanted it to be first week instead of week 1? I could just type right over it, but I can also go into edit mode by pressing function key F2.
F2. Edit.
And then I could go backspace over the 1.
1. Space.
And then press home to go to the beginning of that little line.
Home.
And type in first. And press spacebar. And so I've got first week there.
First week.
And press enter.
80. C6.
So by pressing F2, you can get into edit mode and change formulas and change text and different things, copy and paste, different things like that. That works really well when you need it. You can also use Control and your arrow keys to move from the edge of the current data region to the edge on the other side in whatever direction you're pressing the Control key. So focus is in cell C6 for me right now. The edge of that data range on the right currently is F6. So if I press Control right arrow, focus should move directly to F6. The contents of that cell has the number 100 in it, so I should hear that. So I'll press Control right arrow.
100. F6. Edge of current data region.
Great. Now if I were to go back to the left, the first cell out to the left, there are several cells in a row that are all contiguous, and that's the key, that they have to all be contiguous. If you want to go to the end of this contiguous row to the left, I could do Control left, and that would put focus in B6, and the word flour is there.
Flour. B6. Edge of current data region.
If I wanted to go to the bottom of this data region, the bottom of this is weekly totals in B10. I could press Control down arrow.
Weekly totals. B10. Edge of current data region.
To the right of this is a cell C10 that has the number or the formula 185 on my computer. It might be different on yours. That's okay if it's slightly different. I'll press Control right arrow to move there.
185 has formula C10. Edge of current data region.
I heard it say edge of current data region. I could have just used right arrow right there since it's only one cell away, But since we're using the control key, what will happen now is there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 empty cells to the right, and then there's a hyperlink out there that says freedomscientific.com/training. So I'm going to press Control right arrow, and we'll skip right over those empty cells. I'll go directly from cell C10 over to J10, and I should hear that hyperlink.
www.freedomscientific.com/training has hyperlink.
Great.
J10. Start of
So
new
that's
data
just a quick way to navigate using control and the arrow keys. Home will move you to the beginning of a row. So if I'm in J10 right now and I press the home key, focus will move to A10.
Home. Blank. A10.
Control spacebar will select the current column.
Selected entire column. Select A1. Cost of rest.
And if I unselect that just by pressing up arrow,
Blank. A9.
Shift spacebar selects an entire row.
Selected entire row.
And sometimes you'll need to select an entire column or an entire row to widen the column, for example, to fit the widest selection of all the cells that's in that column. Or maybe you need to change the row height or do different things like that. So I'm just going to press left arrow to unselect this row.
Blank. A9.
The way I remember that, if you can't remember, control spacebar versus shift spacebar, think of control spacebar with the letter C for control as column. And that will help you hopefully remember that the control spacebar is the column, is the keystroke to select an entire column. A range is the next thing I want to talk about. And we've been moving through a range here on the spreadsheet that I'm using where there's first week and then week 2, week 3, week 4 in column C, D, E, and F. And over in column B, starting with row 6, is flour, going down that column, sugar, meat, oil, and then weekly totals below that in cell B10. So a range in Excel can be a single cell, or it can be a group of two or more cells, or it can even be several different blocks of cells that are not even next to each other. So I could have a block of cells in the top left corner, A1, B1, and C1. That could be one range. And then I could have another range, D1, or A10, let's say, B10, and C10 would give me another range. So those two, even though they're not contiguous or right next to each other, those two blocks of cells could be called one range. You don't find too many times where people name ranges for non-contiguous sections like that, but it does happen. If you wanted to go to or move to a cell for non-contiguous blocks, you can use the Go To dialog box. So I'll press Control G.
Control G. Go to dialog. Reference : edit combo. 0 of 1.
Notice there's a reference number there from the first time I used it. That will fill up as time goes on during this session. It'll get some different numbers in there. But what I want to do is I want to type in, let's just say I want to select a range of cells here, and I want to move to A1 and B2. A1 is the top left and B2 is the bottom right. That would be a 4-cell range. So I can just type in A1 colon B2.
2.
And then I could separate that by a comma.
Comma.
And I could type in another range. Let's say I wanted to get to the range that's D1 through F9. I could type D1 colon F9.
9.
And for those of you who are listening to JAWS running on my computer, I've got these keystrokes for alphabet letters silenced. The only thing you're going to hear is the space bar occasionally, I think, and enter in the numbers. So I've typed in A1 colon B2, comma, D1 colon F9, and now when I press enter, what will happen is the Go To dialog box will close, and both of those ranges will be highlighted in the worksheet.
Select 2 areas, A1-B2, D1-F9, blank.
And JAWS read to me the fact that there was 2 areas that were selected. It gave me the first one from A1 to B2, it said, and then the second one from D1 to F9. So I got that information. If there had been, well, we'll leave it at that. That's good. Now we can use the names feature in Excel to give ranges or a single cell, even as I said, because a range can be a single cell, a name. And it's a lot easier to remember a name to move to something than to press Control G to go to something and say, oh, I need to go to cell X55 because I want to look up part numbers. Or I need to go to sheet 2 and I need to look in column A and in row 30, for example. It's a lot easier to say, well, I need to go to prices or part numbers or whatever, as opposed to cell coordinates. So you can name them. It makes it a lot easier to use the Go To dialog box. Let's use the Go To dialog box. Now I'm going to press right arrow just to unselect those two ranges that I had selected before.
Blank, E1.
And again, all these things that I'm demonstrating right now, you could even have a blank worksheet open. You don't have to have the same workbook that I've got open here. We're not really working with data too much at this point. We're just talking about navigation. So what I want to do is use the Go To. I'll press Control G.
Control G, Go To dialog, reference : edit combo, 0 of 2.
And I want to go to cell I, India 25.
2, 5.
Press Enter.
Total cost of goods sold for the month, I-25. Restaurant supply sample spreadsheet Excel. Total cost of goods sold for the month, I-25.
This is the label, if you will, for where the total cost of goods sold for the month will go, the final cost of everything we've used in this sample restaurant. If I press down, hold down the Shift key and press down arrow here.
Select I-26.
Now I have I-25 and I-26 both selected. The text in cell I-25, which says total cost of goods sold for the month, and in the blank cell I-26 is where I'll put a formula later on that will gather all the information about the prices and put the total price there. But I want to give this a name so it'll make it easier to remember to move to. So what we want to do is go to the Formulas tab of the ribbon. And you can get to the Formulas tab of the ribbon by pressing Alt and the letter M as in Mike. It's about the fourth tab over to the right, third tab over to the right from Home. So I'll press Alt M as in Mike.
Alt M. Lower ribbon, group box, Formulas tab.
And what we're looking for is in the Defined Names group of the lower ribbon. The Defined Names group is just about halfway across the ribbon on my computer. And I can tab to it, or I can press the letter M again, because I'm looking for the Define Name button, excuse me, and its key tip is the letter M. So I can just press M, or you can click it.
Menu, leaving menus, define name ...
If you're a mouse user, once you click that Define Name button, a context menu pops open, and the first thing in that context menu is Define Name again. So I'll press Enter on that.
Leaving menus, new name dialog, name : edit.
Okay, so we got a name here, and let me do a say line, which is insert up arrow with JAWS.
Name :
Didn't say anything.
Home, O, T, A. L underline cost underline of underline goods under home.
I think it was highlighted, so it didn't read right. So I pressed Home, and now I'll try insert up arrow.
Total underline cost underline of underline goods underline sold underline for underline the underline month.
So JAWS reads it with those underlines. The point here is that it took that text, total cost of goods sold for the month, and where there were spaces, Excel put underlines or underscores. You cannot have spaces in the names, and that's why it did this. Another way of doing that would be to use mixed case and capitalize the T.
O, T, A, L.
And where the space is,
underline,
or the underline, I can delete that.
C.
And after the L,
L,
there can be a capital C,
C,
so that when JAWS reads it, JAWS still pronounces it properly.
Total cost underline of underline.
So if I delete those,
O, S, T, underline, O.
And there's an O, that's a lowercase o, so I want to make that a capital O.
F.
Delete it, and press Shift O. So now it says
total cost of underlying goods.
Total cost of underlying goods. So when you take out the spaces and capitalize the first letter of each word that's in a chain of words like that, JAWS will read them properly. And that sounds a lot better than the underlines. For now, I'm just going to leave it at that and press Enter.
Selected range. Page down.
Press Control Home. I hit page down by mistake, so I'll press Control Home.
First cell, cost of restaurant.
And use Control G to move to that spot.
Control G, Go to dialog. Reference colon edit combo. 0 of 4.
Okay, so let's press the Tab key and move to the Go To list.
Go to colon list box reference colon.
There are some references, as I said, and that gets cluttered up as time goes on. When you're in this session, I'll down arrow until I find total cost of goods.
$E $1, $A $9, $C $3. Total cost of underline goods underline sold underline for underline the underline month.
There it is, and I'll press enter.
Select I-26.
Okay, focus is now back in I-25 and 26. So we've got that range selected, and I'll press left arrow just to unselect that.
Blank H25.
So it's a lot easier to remember and move to a name for a range than it is to remember the coordinates. So I encourage you to use names frequently, and just remember you cannot put spaces in names that have more than one word. You have to combine them into one long string of text. What about comments? Comments are accessible, and if I wanted to insert and read a comment, I'll show you how to do that in a second, but let's go to the Go To dialog with Control G first.
Control G. Go to dialog. Reference colon edit combo. 0 of 5.
I already have one comment in cell B as in Bravo 9 because there's oil there, and this restaurant supply spreadsheet is based on a fictitious pizza restaurant place where they have flour and sugar and different types of meat like pepperoni, and they do use oil to grease the pans and different things like that. So let's move there. I'll type in Bravo 9.
9.
And press enter.
Oil has comment. B9.
Cool.
Restaurant
So I heard
supply sample spreadsheet Excel. Oil has comment. B9.
I heard it say that it's oil and that it has a comment. So we'll talk about reading comments in just a minute, but let's go up to sugar.
Meat. B8. Sugar. B7.
And let's go insert a comment here about sugar. We're going to say pounds of sugar used. How about? Okay, so I'm going to go to the Review tab of the ribbon by pressing Alt and the letter R. The Review tab is 2 out to the right of the Formulas tab. So Alt R.
Alt R. Lower ribbon. Group box. Review tab.
The item I'm looking for is in the Comments group of the lower ribbon. The Comments group is the next to the last group of controls on the ribbon for me. And inside that group, I'm looking for a button called New Comment. It's the first button, and it's also the key tip letter C as in Charlie, or comment. So I'm going to press C.
Leaving menus. Blank. Comment edit.
Okay, and I can just type in some text here. And I'll just type in, hello, how are you?
Question?
No, actually, we said we were going to put pounds of flour.
Select.
Let me do that.
Period.
So what I typed in, I'll just press up arrow.
Home.
And this is another one of those areas where it's not reading very well. Excuse me. So you can, it's one of those places where, again, where you can hear the characters of text, but as I press left and right arrow.
B, A, S.
Oh, I can't hear that. Never mind.
A, B, M.
But I'm not hearing the words.
Measure.
There we go. But it's not doing a say line. So if I do a single word, insert 5.
Measure. By.
And then insert right arrow to move to the right.
Root PC to JAWS.
Nope, that's not what I wanted.
PC cursor.
Let's try this again. Insert left arrow to go back.
Measure.
Measure. Insert right arrow.
By. Pounds of flour. Used period.
There we go. So up and down arrow is not reading that, but it says measure by pounds of flour used. And again, if you were trying to edit this, it might be easier to edit that comment in Notepad or something, and then copy that to the clipboard, come in here and choose to insert the comment, and then paste it there. If you want to be sure that you've got the text all formatted properly and it reads good. So what I'll do is, I'm not going to press enter to, if I were at the end of this line, I wouldn't press enter to close this dialog box, because enter, or this pop-up that appears for the notes, or the comment I should say, If you press enter, this is a multi-line edit box, so your focus just goes down to the next line. So to get out of it, just press escape.
Escape. Restaurant supply sample spreadsheet Excel-unfinished.xlsx-Excel. Supplies for my restaurant. Sugar. Has comment. B7. B7. Sugar. Has comment.
If you want to practice some more, you could go to the cell B6 for flour and put a comment there that says pounds of flour used, and so on. You could press, go to J Juliet 4 and type in a comment that says these are just sample links. They don't really work, except for the one for the training headquarters, of course. You could go to I-25 and insert a comment that says something like, we had a high cost of goods sold this month, and we need to work on bringing our costs down. So your assistant manager or somebody else who's helping you run that restaurant might get that comment and look at it and say, oh, okay, good deal. Let's talk about column and row headers for ranges that will read automatically for screen reader users. I'm going to press up arrow to move to B5, Bravo 5.
Flower, blank, B5.
And as I press right arrow, the things out to the right are the column headers for the range below. So the first one is the first week.
First week, C5.
Then week 2.
Week 2, D5. Week 3, E5. Week 4, F5. Totals for the month, G5.
And there we have totals for the month. I have some numbers populated there. I don't have the totals because we'll do that with formulas later. But if I down arrow to row 6,
blank, G6.
And then left arrow, I should hear in F6, week 4, I should just hear the quantity 100.
100, F6.
I didn't hear the fact that this is the column for week 4. Week 4, the text for that is right up above this cell in cell F5. If I continue to down left arrow rather until I come to the word flour.
45, E6.
That's actually week 3.
55, D6.
That's week 2.
80, C6.
That's week 1.
Flour, B6.
And there's flour. That's the beginning of that row. If I press right arrow and go back to that first week.
80, C6.
Again, it didn't say first week. But if I press down arrow now, I should hear, or I would like to hear, the row headers, which are out in column B. So if I down arrow, I should hear the contents of this cell is 30, but the row header is sugar.
30, C7. 60, C8.
And C8's row header is meat in B8, Bravo 8. So what we want to do is put the focus in B5, Bravo 5, because there's column headers and row headers in this particular range, and we want to make sure that we put the focus at the intersection of the column and row headers. So I'm going to up arrow.
30, C7, 80, C6. First week, C5.
There's C5, and I'll press left arrow to go to B5.
Blank, B5.
And if you're somewhere else in the workbook or spreadsheet, you can just use Control-G and use your go-to and type in B5, Bravo 5, and move there. So out to the right are the column headers, and below this are the row headers. We're going to go back to the Formulas tab of the ribbon by pressing Alt and the letter M as in Mike.
Alt-M. Lower ribbon, group box, Formulas tab.
We're looking at that Define Name button again that we had before, and that's the letter M in the Define Names group.
Menu, leaving menus, define name ...
And then we have the Define Name ... button, or item in the context menu there, and I'll press Enter on that.
Leaving menus, new name dialog, name : edit.
Now we have a name here where we can type in a range, or a name rather, for this name that we're going to actually insert here. Now the thing about this name is that it's going to be a unique name that screen readers look for, and this works for JAWS, it works for some of the other screen readers out there who have followed suit as well. So if you put this in the workbook, what you're using is the Define Name feature of the workbook, and that name gets stored in the workbook, so you don't have to send anybody a separate file or a note saying, here's how you have to set up your column and row headers. You're doing it for them, and it travels with the workbook, which is great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in the word title, T-I-T-L-E, and then the word region with a capital R. Remember, there's no spaces.
Title region.
So I have title region in there so far. Then I'm going to put 2 periods.
Period. Period.
2 dots. Now, the next thing, or the last thing that I really want to do, I'm going to go back to in front of that first period.
Period. Period. N.
Right at the end of the letter N.
Period.
And I'm going to put a number, numeral 1.
1.
Because I want this to be title region 1.
Title region 1 dot dot.
And it has the 2 periods, so I'll go to the end of the line.
N.
What we're looking for is the bottom right corner of the range. So the weekly totals row is row 10. The totals for the month is column G. So G10 is the bottom right corner of this range. So we're telling JAWS where the focus of the cell is right now is B5, and that's the top left. So JAWS knows, okay, that's where the top left is. The name of this region we're giving it is title region 1. Put in a couple of periods in the name, and then we're going to type in the lower right-hand cell coordinates for the bottom right side. So it's G10.
1, 0.
And once you've typed in title region title region 1 G10,
Title region 1 G10.
you can press enter.
Restaurant supply sample spreadsheet Excel. Blank. B5.
Okay, and that closes the define name dialog box. And now I can just press right arrow to go to first week.
First week. C5.
Now I can press down arrow to go to row 6, and I should hear the contents of that cell, which we heard earlier, which was 80. But this time, we should hear JAWS read the contents of the row header, which is B6 out to the left. So JAWS should say flour and then 80.
Flour, 80, C6.
And then the contents of the cell, C6. If I press right arrow, I would go to, on the row for flour, I would go from week 1 to week 2. And before, we just heard the quantity there, which was 55. This time, we should hear it say week 2, 55.
Week 2, 55. Week 3, 45. E6.
And I pressed right arrow quickly there, and it went to week 3, and so on. If I down arrow here on week 3, I should hear the next row down is sugar.
Sugar, 20. E7.
And the word sugar is 1, 2, 3 columns out past to the left of the current location of this focus, which is in cell E7. So you get the idea. This is great. It creates the column header and row header information you need for your worksheet or workbook users. And it gives you the ability to have it saved with the workbook. And so it travels with the workbook, and the people who are using screen readers will automatically hear the column and row headers. So there are a couple of things. I'm going to switch back over to the lesson real quick just to talk about that.
Excel 2016, Lesson 1.
And inside this lesson, I'm going to press Insert F6 to bring up the list of JAWS headings.
Heading list dialog. Headings list view. Excel 2016, Lesson 1.
All of these things that we've talked about are marked off by headings.
Excel program window overview :2. Rename a worksheet :2. Add a new worksheet :2.
And then down near the bottom, I'm going to press End and then move up 1.
End. JAWS keystrokes for Excel :2.
And up there to create row and column headers.
Create row and column headers for ranges that read automatically for screen reader users :2.
So I used Insert F6 to bring up the headings list in the lesson. And I'm looking at that heading for create row and column headers, and I'll press Enter to move there.
Heading level 2. Create row and column headers for ranges that read automatically for screen reader users. Create row and column headers for ranges that read automatically for screen reader users. Heading level 2.
I stopped JAWS from reading, and I'm just going to highlight some text here on the screen.
Create row.
Oops, if JAWS will let me do it without moving the screen. So there's some unique naming that you have to adhere to, if you will, to make sure that JAWS understands where the column headers and the row headers are. You want to give each region a new name. So we had one here called Title Region 1. We could have another one called Title Region 2 or Title Region 3. But after a while, that's going to get confusing because you might be looking at Title Region 15 and think, well, what's in that title region? Now I got to move there to find out. So while I use that as an example, you're probably better off if you do things like naming them Title First Quarter Sales or Title Sales Q1, Title Part Number and Prices, and things like that. The name has to be unique, You can have as many of these as you want throughout the entire workbook on different worksheets, but they all have to have a unique name. Okay, so that first part, title region 1 or first quarter sales, whatever title, first quarter sales, the key word there is the word title. That word title and then the name to the right of it without any spaces tells JAWS that this is a region, that's its name, and it has both column and row headers. The word title tells JAWS that information. Then the two dots and the number at the bottom, or after the two dots, tells JAWS that's where the bottom right corner of that cell or that range is. You always make sure you type in 2 periods, and then you type in the bottom right coordinates, as I mentioned before. If your range only has row titles, for example, you might want to give it a different name. Instead of title, you would type row title as your keyword. So row title, region 1, means that the first column, or whatever column you've highlighted, is where the row titles are. So I have examples here: row title region 1, row title first quarter sales, etc. Now if I want to do the same thing for the column,
bullet home selected, bullet column title read,
and I just have column headers, not row headers, I still use the word title, but then I use column title as the keyword. Column title region 1, column title sales Q1, column title part numbers and prices, etc. So the keywords are: title by itself tells JAWS it has both column and row headers. Row title tells JAWS it just has row headers. And column title as your keyword obviously tells JAWS you only have column headers. Make sure you put your cursor in that first uppermost left cell, or somewhere in that. I think it would be if it's a range that just has column headers, you want to put it in that row where the column headers are, and on just to the left of the first one if there's nothing in the first cell to the left. Or if there's nothing to the left, it could be the first cell, that has the column header in it. Maybe it's in cell A5, for example. So there's nothing else to the left. The point is column title, row title, or just title by itself are your keywords. So the next heading,
JAWS keystrokes for Excel heading level 2.
There's a link here.
JAWS keystrokes opens a new window link
that points to a new window with JAWS keystrokes. That gives you a lot more than what I have here in the documentation. In the documentation, I have some other keystrokes here. List cells in the current column. Insert Shift and the letter C, Charlie. I'm looking down, it said list cells with comments is Control Shift apostrophe. Read cells with comments is Alt Shift apostrophe. Let's go back over to the spreadsheet and look at that real quick.
Restaurant supply sample spreadsheet Excel-unfinished.xlsx-Excel. Please wait. Restaurant supply sample spreadsheet Excel. Restaurants.
Okay, stop, JAWS. So what if I want to list the cells with comments, and that's on the visible screen here. I'll press the keystroke for that, which is Control Shift apostrophe. Had to look it up again. Control Shift apostrophe.
Cells with comments dialog. List 1 list view. B7 Dan Clark measured by pounds of flour used. 1 of 2.
And the second one, if I press down arrow.
B9 Dan Clark gallons of oil used.
Good. Okay. I'll press escape to get out of that.
Escape.
Excuse me.
20.
Now what if I couldn't remember those keystrokes? There's a great new feature in JAWS called Command Search. To open up the Command Search, you first press Insert Spacebar, and you'll hear a little tone pop sound to tell you that you're in a layered mode. Insert Spacebar puts JAWS in a layered mode. We've used every key on the keyboard pretty much for everything, for something. So pressing Insert Spacebar and hearing that pop sound tells JAWS, okay, let's look at this new virtual keyboard. Imagine a different keyboard, like a layer above the keyboard or off to the side of the keyboard where you're working now. Imagine it is just a separate virtual keyboard. Insert Spacebar gets you into that mode. You hear a pop sound, and then JAWS is waiting for you to press another keystroke to do an action. So if I were going to look for comments, or let's say JAWS commands, I could press the letter J for JAWS. After I press Insert Spacebar and I heard that tone, now I'll press the letter J for JAWS. Oops, I think I must have gotten out of it because I typed it in my spreadsheet.
Escape. Escape.
Let's try that again. Insert spacebar. I hear that pop sound, and now I'll type the letter J.
Search for JAWS commands dialog. Search for :edit. Search for :edit.
This brings up the search for JAWS commands. It's a great tool. I can't remember all the keystrokes for JAWS myself, and I've been using JAWS for years and years. So I'll type in the word comment.
There are no selectable ARIA controls, combo boxes, list boxes, or tree views on this page.
That's okay. I've changed my JAWS to be a little bit different than yours. On my computer, Forms mode is not on by automatically. On your computers, by default, Forms mode should be on automatically, and you should have gone into Forms mode. So you should be able to just type the letter C to start out the word comments. JAWS was looking for navigation quick keys behavior because I'm not in Forms mode. So I'll press Enter to go into Forms mode. And I hear that pop sound. Now I'll type in comment. And then the screen has changed below the search field to show things that match. I'll just press the Tab key to move forward.
Edit comment. Shift plus F2 heading level 3.
There's Edit comment.
Read cell comment. Alt plus Shift plus apostrophe heading level 3.
And I just press Tab again. I hear that reading a cell comment is Alt plus Shift plus apostrophe.
List cells with comments. Control plus Shift plus apostrophe heading level 3.
And there's the keystroke for listing them. Now if I'm back on the one that says read, I'll press Shift Tab.
Read cell comment. Alt plus Shift plus apostrophe heading level 3.
When you've highlighted one of these commands, if you press Enter, and if there's a comment where the focus was, it'll read it. I'll press Enter. See, there wasn't
no comment visible for this cell.
Good. So JAWS said no comment visible for this cell. So I'm going to move back over to the left to the one for sugar.
Week 2, 21st week, 30, sugar, has comment, B7.
And I'll press that keystroke again to read the cell comment, which was Alt-Shift apostrophe.
Dan Clark : measure by pounds of flour used.
And now we heard the comment spoken. There are other things that you can do as well. For example, if I'm in cell I-24,
25, blank, I-26.
I-26, my fault, where the total cost of goods was going to be. For example, I'm going to move to cell C10 for now. Control G.
Control G. Go to dialog. Reference : edit combo. 0 of 6.
I'll type in C10, Charlie 10.
0.
And press Enter.
Weekly totals. First week, 185. Has formula, C10.
So C10 is the column of the first week. And we have numbers up above for flour, sugar, meat, and oil. And the total for that week is 185. There's a monitor cell that you can press in JAWS. And to set a monitored cell, you can set up to 9 of them, up to 10 of them, 1 through 0. So I can hold down Insert, Shift, and number 1.
Exclaim.
Oops. Hold on. Press Escape.
Escape. Escape. Week 2, blank, first week, 185.
Let's try that again. I've got my computer set to laptop keyboard layout, and I forgot, so I'll use Caps Lock. Let's see. Caps Lock, Shift, and the number 1.
Setting monitor cell 1 to C10.
Again, my computer may be set up a little differently than yours. If you're using desktop layout, the keystroke is Insert Shift 1 all the way up through 0 for 10 different monitored cells. So I set a monitored cell there. The quantity at that total was 185.
Oil, 15, C9.
I pressed up arrow to move to C9 where I had 15 gallons of oil. Remember that comment there was that we had gallons of oil used. If I left arrow,
oil, has comment,
and
B9.
press Alt-Shift apostrophe.
Dan Clark : gallons of oil used.
I hear that the comment was gallons of oil used. Now let's go back to the right to C9.
First week, 15, C9.
And what if I said, oh, my mistake, I really only used 10. So instead of 15, let's type in a 10 there.
1, 0.
And just press right arrow to go to the right.
Week 2, 12, D9.
Now I did that on purpose by pressing right arrow because if you press Enter, the default behavior for Excel is to move down to the next cell where the weekly totals was. But I wanted to use the monitored cell technique to read that without moving to it. So to read a monitored cell, you just press Alt-Shift, Alt and the Shift key, and the number of the monitored cell, in this case 1.
First week, weekly totals, 180, C10.
And JAWS read that information to me for weekly totals at 180, even though focus is in the second week and not in week 1, and even though focus is not on that total itself. I set a monitored cell there, and that's a great feature. If you wanted to monitor, for example, the total cost of goods in cell I-26, I think it is.
25, blank, I-26.
That would be the total cost of goods. As we started fleshing out this workbook, we would put the formulas in there, and it would show up there. I could set a monitored cell there and then read that and hear the total cost of goods sold for the month without ever having to move there by using the monitored cells. Great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to the lesson.
Excel 2016, Lesson 1-in.
And go to the next page.
Prior page link. Next page link.
And press enter.
Conclusion and contact information.
So this brings up the conclusion and contact information page. For our contact information, if you have any questions, feel free to call or write. You have my email address.
Contact information heading level 1. dclark@bfogroup.com, send mail link.
And Dusty Voorhees.
dvorhees@bfogroup.com.
And then just past that, there's a link for the zip file that contains all the documentation for today's lesson.
Entire contents of today's presentation opens a zip file link.
And that opens a zip file that you can use to download the contents of this lesson if you don't already have it. Well, that's going to do it for now. I'll call it an end to the lesson. And I'll stop the recording. And we'll take questions after that if anybody has any questions. I'll go ahead and stop the recording first.
DLG Fit Main. Stop recording button.